Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is August 7th, 2019. Thank you so much for joining me. A couple of items we're going to talk about today are the Second Amendment. Given all of the hoopla that has been discussed in the media since this weekend's tragedy with the mass shootings in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio. So we're going to talk about that. And gold has made a multi-year high. So are we in the midst of a gold bull run? We think we are. So we're going to talk about both of those things. So let's get straight to the market news. The S&P gained 2 points. The Dow lost 22. The NASDAQ gained 30. And the Russell 2000 was relatively flat, losing 1.5 points. The Dow Jones Transports, along with the New York Stock Exchange, was also flat for the day. However, if you were watching the markets early this morning, you would have thought this sell-off was continuing. Of course, we had a rebound yesterday, but now the Dow Jones was down nearly 600 points at its low, yet somehow, miraculously, it was able to rally back and close down only 22 points for the day. I find this quite odd. Rarely, if ever, do you see this type of turnaround based off of nothing. I mean, there was no news coming out that the Federal Reserve is going to start cutting interest rates. There was no major speech by another member of the Federal Reserve stating as such. President Trump didn't say, yep, we were going to strike a deal with China. Stephen Mnuchin didn't come out, we're going to strike a deal, we're in the final laps. Larry Kudlow didn't come out. There was nothing. There was absolutely nothing that came out, as far as I can tell, that shocked these markets from being down 600 points on the Dow to only closing down 22 points. I mean, when you see that type of sell-off, how many people are saying, yeah, let's run to start buying everything? That just typically doesn't happen. So I have some doubts about what's going on here. Is this part of the plunge protection team that Donald Trump discussed last year when we had our bear market in December of 2018? Plunge protection team. This is Orwellian. This exists. I mean, the president does have a black budget. We don't know how much is in it. We don't know what he's using for. That's why it's called a black budget. He's obsessed with these markets. Is he using some sort of emergency power to manipulate these markets? I really hope not. I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but my goodness, his obsession with the market and its erratic behavior over the past almost going on a year now, really, is just something to behold. I think it's really the foreshocks of what's going to happen, especially given our volatility model that we talk about here all the time. But it's something to ponder. So that's here in the domestic markets. Oil just got beat today, got beat down. However, it is picking up right now as I'm doing this podcast. We have WTI trading at $52.63 a barrel. Brent is trading at $57.57 a barrel. This is basically another bear market from a recent high, a decline of 20% by Wall Street's metrics on the price of oil. We've been telling you this, folks. It was going to take a geopolitical event for oil to go higher and to sustain itself at a higher price. We're in a global slowdown. The fundamentals of supply and demand are what is ruling this game. If you have some sort of geopolitical risk, you have some sort of major upset, some major outbreak, some major tragedy in Venezuela or Iran or somewhere else in the Middle East, then you can see the price of oil spike, and maybe for quite a while. Hopefully that doesn't happen. We don't need another war. We don't need more intervention in nation building. We talked about that yesterday. We'll have those conversations as we make our way through, but hopefully that starts to simmer down. Gold, however, did pierce $1,500 an ounce. We said be on the lookout for that. If it could breach $1,450 an ounce and hold above it, we said 1,500 is the next marker. I was surprised how quickly it got there, but nevertheless, we are there. It's pulled back a little bit as I'm doing this podcast. Gold is now trading at $1,497 an ounce. Silver also rallied rather spectacularly, too, for the day, and is trading at $17.15 an ounce. Been telling you here, guys, for months that precious metals are undervalued as far as I was concerned. Buy low, sell high. I still believe both of these precious metals are undervalued. What these precious metals are looking at, and what obviously investors are looking at, is the tremendous amount of negative yielding debt, which is now $15 trillion. You heard me correctly, $15 trillion in negative yielding debt. Government debt, corporate debt, even some junk bonds out of Europe are have a negative yield. It's insanity, but this is what you get when you have zero interest rate policy, negative interest rate policy, and quantitative easing the world over. This is what you get. These are the distortions. This is why it's difficult to make heads and tails of a lot of this stuff. But precious metals, they are going to thrive off of this negative interest rate environment because you're talking about real negative interest rates. So real quickly, if you have a nominal rate, you subtract out the rate of inflation, and it gives you your real number. Okay, so say, for example, if you have GDP as a nominal rate of, let's just say, 4%, and we have an inflation rate of 2%, 4 minus 2 is 2. So our real GDP figure would be 2%. Do the same thing with anything, okay? So right now, because we are in negative territory and so low here in the United States, if you really take into consideration the real rate of interest, it is also negative. Negative real interest rates. Gold and silver and other precious metals, but primarily gold and silver, are going to thrive in this environment. And we know perfectly well that central banks the world over are going to embark on another easing cycle. The Federal Reserve just cut interest rates last week. The ECB is getting ready to prime the pump. Mario Draghi, the president of the ECB, is going to be stepping down in October. I can guarantee you his send-off is going to be a rate cut, probably in September, maybe even in October as well. He's going to hand off the post to former IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde. She's already welcomed and is a supporter and a proponent and an advocate and a lover of negative interest rates. So you can bet your bottom dollar that she's going to cut interest rates when she gets in there too, because she's going to want to make a name for herself. She's going to go down as one of the worst ECB presidents ever, but that's okay. We'll let her do her thing. So, where does this leave us with Uncle Sam's U.S. 10-year Treasury? Lost 3% today, now yielding 1.68%. Again, the global economy and investors are starting to price in a global slowdown and a global recession, which is coming. Recessions have not been outlawed. The data we talk about here on a daily basis, the presentations that I've put up on thecapitalnews.com and on our YouTube channel, The Capital News, I ask you kindly to take the time to watch those videos, share, like, and subscribe. Get the word out. This is an educational platform trying to throw some data out there that I discuss here in visual format so you can have a sense of what I'm looking at. Do your own analysis. I give you the sources. Go do your own business with it. Cut the data up any way you like. You can cut it up a million ways to Sunday. But we're looking for markers. We're looking to find a range of time as to when we are likely to reach the peak of this expansion, which would then signal, obviously, the downturn and the subsequent recession. So that is important because we need to know how to position our portfolios. We need to know how to be prepared because politicians aren't going to tell you this is coming, most of them. I mean, Donald Trump is still telling you this is the greatest economy ever in the history of the United States. This is just a flat-out lie, or he's being lied to, and he just is hearing what he wants to hear. Take your pick. Either is unacceptable, and it's a disservice to this country as far as I'm concerned. So, getting back to our precious metals here, this is important to note. There are many ways that you can play this if you want to invest in precious metals. You can own them outright. You can buy physical gold and physical silver. You can buy ETFs, GLD and SLV for gold and silver respectively. And you can buy the mining stocks, the miners of gold and silver. And there are obviously ETFs that for broader diversification. I advise you to look at those things. Take a look. Add to your portfolio. I mean, it's all about diversification. I honestly believe that we are in a bull market when it comes to the precious metals. Can there be a pullback? Of course. Nothing goes straight up forever. Nothing goes straight down forever. But over time, and with central banks starting to prime the press and starting to cut interest rates, once again, what can you expect? People are going to be flocking to precious metals. They're going to be flocking to some sort of safety. And I think precious metals are going to be rewarded for this. So take a look at them. The VIX, the volatility index, also lost 3% on the day. It's now trading at $19.49. So there you have it, folks. Some other economic news before we get to the Second Amendment. We have Chinese exports rise unexpectedly in the month of July. Exports from China unexpectedly increased 3.3% year on year in July of 2019, beating market expectations of a 2% drop. So, this is some interesting news, isn't it? Because we got a couple other things here. Chinese July trade surplus is also larger than expected, and Chinese imports fall less than expected. So, is this the Chinese manipulating their numbers? I wouldn't be surprised. But there's definitely sending the message out that the trade war is not hurting them. They might be slowing down, but we're not hurt. We're not hurt. This is a game, folks. This is back and forth. This is Donald Trump saying the United States is experiencing the greatest economy ever in our history. Not true. And you got the Chinese coming out here and saying, no, we're not affected. Look, we got better exports. Imports aren't as bad as everybody was thinking. I mean, the first casualty of war is the truth. The first casualty of war is the truth. We're in a trade war. Both of these leaders want to thump their chest, want to flex their muscles, and say everything's fine. Everything's fine. It's not. That's why you got to be prepared. If everything was fine, you wouldn't have oil tanking. You wouldn't be in a bear market. You wouldn't have other commodities that we talk about here. Natural gas, lumber, aluminum, copper. These things wouldn't be rolling over. They wouldn't be at multi-month lows. I mean, it doesn't work that way. You wouldn't have gold and silver rallying. That's not how it works. You wouldn't have utility stocks rallying. You wouldn't have REITs, real estate investment trust stocks, rallying. That's not how it works. Those are defensive plays. These are people that are getting prepared. They're getting hunkered down. They're waiting for something to happen, and it ain't good. Could we have some leadership that tells us the truth? Of course not. Why? Because this is the United States of America in the 21st century. We can't be told the truth. It doesn't work that way. So around the world real quick, just so you understand what other stocks did. Well, I mean, this was the same thing with the European stocks, too. Earlier in the day, they were actually up because, obviously, of the time difference between Europe and the United States. However, once the U.S. markets opened and started cratering, it brought down the European markets as well. But nevertheless, the European markets were able to sort of catch a bid and rally at the end of the day as well. So they mostly ended up in the green for the day. Right now, we have the Japanese markets up 110 points, about a 0.5% gain. We have the Chinese markets up, respectively, amongst their few indices, about 1%, give or take. And this is obviously on the back of the better-than-expected news on the trade front. We have the South Korean market catching a little bit of a bid, which is no surprise given how much it sold off over the past couple of weeks. It is up 21 points, representing an increase of 1%. Same thing with the Hong Kong market, since they've been selling off given their riots and everything else that's been going on. They are up right now 130 points, representing an increase of 0.5%. So now, we talked, I believe we did yesterday briefly, about the Reserve Bank of New Zealand cutting interest rates by more than expected, by 50 basis points. The market was anticipating a cut of 25 basis points. Again, they cut by 50 and are opening the door to potentially adopting negative interest rates there as well. Now, historically speaking, New Zealand and the Reserve Bank of Australia, these two countries, they tend to kick off easing cycles. So don't be surprised. I mean, we already know this. We are in the midst of an easing cycle. This is just another signal that one is going to take place. There were a few other central banks that cut interest rates unexpectedly or by more than what was anticipated. You also have India continuing to cut interest rates. So for those people out there, and there are many of them, especially since the beginning of this year, we're saying, you know what, the U.S. dollar is going to tank, and emerging markets is the place to be. I don't know how anybody could say this. I really don't. I understand maybe for the long haul that you think that emerging markets will be fine. Over the long haul, I would agree with that because this economy, the global economy, will pick up steam again. But it's not going to be for a while because we're slowing down and it's going to be nasty. But over the long haul, if you've got time horizon, that's where you want to be because that's where the demographics are ripe. That's where the commodities are. That's where you want to be for the long term if you have a long-term time horizon. But right now to say that's where you should have been, no way, no how. Although, I have to give it to them, earlier this year, it did catch a bid. So, I mean, it's not to say that if you timed it right, that you could have made a nice little profit, but they're rolling over. And I think a lot of people were anticipating that it was going to be the dollar that was just going to decrease, that it was going to be the Federal Reserve and perhaps the Federal Reserve alone that was going to cut interest rates. And that would have been a boon to emerging markets because it would have weakened the U.S. dollar, which basically means their debts that they would have owed in U.S. dollars, it would have been easier for them to pay those debts. Okay, so you could say, all right, well, that would have been a boon for emerging markets. It's a good theory. It's a good thesis. Makes sense. However, you are in the midst of a global slowdown. What's going to go? Commodities, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Oil, natural gas, copper, lumber, aluminum. They're rolling over. That's what you would anticipate in a global slowdown. So, again, long term, I would think emerging markets are the place to be. But right now, I would shy away from them because this is not the best price point as far as I'm concerned. But, like I say, do your own research. So, now moving on to the political front, because obviously we can't have any story in this country that cannot be touched by politics. So, we had the tragedy this weekend, although there are tragedies every day. They just don't get focused on. This one is obviously more quote-unquote tragic because it involved firearms. Okay? So you have the loss of life in El Paso, Texas. You have the loss of life in Dayton, Ohio. And again, thoughts and prayers are with everybody, but our thoughts and prayers should be with everybody all the time anyway. Success, tragedy, makes no difference. But here it's just a ripe opportunity for politicians to play the game that guns are dangerous and we need more and more regulation. We need more and more bans, and that's it, end of story, because we cannot continue to have these types of events take place. Amen to these types of events not taking place, but you cannot legislate a wicked person righteous. It just doesn't work that way. I know we all wish it could, but that's just not how this world works. Period. Stop. That's it. I mean, we focus on this because it is a hot ticket item, because it allows politicians to get camera time. We are in the midst of the 2020 presidential election, so there's no doubt about it that this is going to become an issue front and center. The loss of life here is tragic. I'll tell you what else is tragic. The loss of life that happens from alcohol consumption, drunk driving, smoking, medical errors, drugs, legal and illegal, auto accidents, heart disease, cancer, and suicide. All of those things trump these shootings. I know they're not as quote-unquote tragic, but they are to the people, their friends, their family. I mean, this is what I don't understand. Is it too cold for somebody to say, well, let's just look at the data? I mean, is it not a sexy enough story to talk about people who are dying or suffering because of alcohol abuse? Because they have kidney cancer or kidney disease? Liver problems? Or cause accidents, drunk driving? Severely hurt somebody or even kill somebody? Smoking? Lung cancer, heart disease, secondhand smoke? Medical errors? Doctors don't mean to hurt or kill people, at least we hope not, but it happens. It's actually one of the leading causes of death in this country. What about the drug problem that we have in this country? Where are the Democrats? Where's their bleeding liberal hearts for these causes? They don't want to talk about them. Auto accidents. I mean, here's the real kicker, right? Because everybody, mainly Democrats, and it's unfortunate this is a partisan issue, but it is, just like everything else for the most part. What do they want? They want to ban assault weapons. Show me a gun that's used for kissing somebody. They're all used for assault. Period. End of story. But you have the right to defend yourself. You have the right to bear arms. It's called the Second Amendment. Let me read it for you. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, obviously, this causes a lot of debate. What did the Founding Fathers mean? Well, it's kind of easy to understand what they meant if you understand the founding of this country. The protection of the individual from the government. That's what our Constitution is all about. Read the Declaration of Independence. Read the Constitution. I took the time to read the Declaration of Independence to you guys on July 4th. I'm going to take the time to also read the Constitution going forward. It's not that long of a document, but it's a beautiful document. It's an historic document. And despite politician after politician after politician, Democrat, Republican, makes no difference, trying to tear away at it, trying to diminish its power, it still stands. That's how powerful that Constitution is, because there's still enough people in this country who believe in those words and those principles. The moment we stop believing in those words and in those principles, that's it. It's over. Game, set, and match. Nobody else is going to pick up the mantle. It's not going to be China. It's not going to be India. It's not going to be Russia. It's not going to be the UK. They got their own problems with Brexit. So, I mean, call them a democracy. That's a joke right now, too. So nobody's going to pick up the mantle. If we Americans forget our Constitution, it's over. Makes no difference what's going on. Believe me when I tell you. We have the right to defend ourselves. Okay? Now, some people want to say, well, back then, they had muskets and pumpkin balls and muzzle loaders. Now, what do you need a machine gun for? Well, that's because that's the world we live in. That's what the government had. Now the government has machine guns. So I think it's right that we should have them as well, if we want them. If we want them. You got to go. I mean, you want to go buy a gun, you still get a background check. I mean, because here's the thing. How far do Democrats want to take it? Because they say, well, you got to have a background check. Okay. I have a gun. I had a background check. I had to file paperwork. How much more do you want? Well, what about if you got mental issues or something? How are they going to make that determination? Is the government going to have a psych eval of everybody? Do you want the government having that information on you? I doubt that you do. Furthermore, you might be sane today, but who's to say you don't snap next week or next month or next year? And now you're psycho. So would this have to be a constant updating of your mental capacity? Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to monitor that? Well, you're going to be in a database. Oh, okay. So we'd be in a database. Who's going to constantly monitor the database? There aren't enough federal agents, state agents, local agents to monitor 330 million Americans. Not even close. So the argument falls flat on its face. This is about confiscation. This is about power and control, which is what the liberals are all about. They are all about power and control. They want your health care. They want to be in complete control of your health care. So I guess that's just going to be the next logical step. They want to take care of you from cradle to grave. They want to take care of your entire health care history. So I guess they are going to know your mental capacity because they want to pay for everything for you. So they're going to have your records. That's if Pocahontas and Crazy Bernie get in there. Now, I don't think it's ever going to happen because you'd still have a little thing called Congress that would get in the way. And Republicans I would hope, would never allow that. I hope the American people would never allow that. Even Democrats who would say this is a step too far. But that's the battle we're in. You see how all of this stuff is interconnected one way or the other? Because it's about power and control. Because how are you going to prevent somebody from going insane or snapping or seeing red? Somebody is just at the end of their rope. They lose their job. They're getting a divorce. Something else tragic happens in their personal life. How are you supposed to monitor that? I mean, I am not calling for anybody to attack anybody, obviously. But you live in a world that is not perfect. Period. End of story. Tomorrow is promised to none of us. Anybody could go out and get hit by a bus. You don't know what's going to happen. All of this discussion is for a false sense of security. Well, if there's a law somewhere in Washington, D.C., then I'm protected. Well, that's a joke, isn't it? There's nothing but laws. There's nothing but chaos going on. I mean, how many more laws do you want? How many more? Here's a prime example. Auto accidents. How tragic are those? I mean, who wants to be in an auto accident? Nobody. Nobody. Who wants to lose a friend or a loved one to an auto accident? Nobody. How many of those people on the road have driver's license? Probably 99% of them. So that means they passed a test. They have a card. They're in a database. Accidents happen every day. Every single day. So what is a background check or any type of other type of identification that you have a firearm? What is that going to do? It's not going to do anything. Doctors have to go through years and years of education, schooling, internships, and then they practice daily on patients. Medical error is a leading cause of death. You want to outlaw doctors? What are you going to do? Heart disease and cancer. Those kill people every day, the leading causes of death. How many things cause cancer in heart disease? A lot of sugar, a lot of fats, a whole host of other foods and drinks. You want to abolish all of those things? You want to have somebody have a background check when they're at the grocery store? Hey, you can't have that much sugar, pal. Met your quota. You're going to have a heart attack. Have cancer. Can't do it. How far do you want to take it? This is what happens whether you're in a free society or not. These shootings happen in other countries. That happened in New Zealand not too long ago. The worst one was in Sweden a handful of years ago. If evil or somebody who is mentally disturbed, if they want to hurt people, they're going to find a way to do it. You cannot legislate a wicked person righteous. You can't do it. I wish we could. That's not the world we live in. But you know what you can do in this country, thank God, is you have the Second Amendment that says, well, you can. You have the right to protect yourself. You also have the right, if you're so scared of going outside, to stay in your house all day. You can do that. You get in a car, you can put on a helmet. You can walk down the street with a helmet if you want to. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what else to tell you. These things are tragic. The other thing is you got politicians right now, particularly Kamala Harris and Spartacus Cory Booker, who are the two black candidates in this race, both senators, one from California, one from New Jersey. And of course, this is all about race and how Donald Trump is a bigot and a racist, and he's dog whistling to all of the neo-Nazis and white supremacists out there. But of course, their rhetoric is fine. Donald Trump can't say anything, but all of the Democrats can say whatever they want. They're allowed to fan the flames. They're allowed to poke the bear. But if Donald Trump says hello, it's Tuesday, that's racist. He's messaging to some Ku Klux Klan member somewhere down south. This is ridiculous. And believe me, Donald Trump is not off the hook as far as I'm concerned. He says things and does things. He goes to the limit too. He is not helping this matter at all. At all. He doesn't have to say the things that he says. He didn't have to get involved with those 4 lunatic congresswomen a couple of weeks ago that took up the national media scene for a week, which was ridiculous. He didn't have to go there. He didn't have to say the things that he said. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing with this stuff, and he knows it gets his base going. And that gets this whole we do not need this. We don't at all. But here you go. You got Senator Kamala Harris and Cory Booker. Where are they when it comes to black-on-black crime in Chicago? And I don't like talking about race. I really don't. White, black, yellow. I really don't like talking about it. We're all human beings here. Isn't that what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. told us and taught us? I thought it was. Yet somehow the Democrats want to make everything about race. If you don't agree with them, you're a racist. That is such an idiotic argument. It's not even funny. But that's where we are, folks. We're protected by our Constitution. We have our rights. The Second Amendment one protects all of them. And so does our right of free speech. So I hope that this resonates with people. I hope you understand some of the... We didn't even get into the numbers because you don't need the numbers. You know all of the statistics, you know intuitively the tragedy that happens in this country on a daily basis with drugs and alcohol and smoking and cancer and suicide rates. I mean, especially that one. You got an increase in suicide rates, particularly among young people, which is no surprise given the amount of student debt, given the amount of depression that exists. Veterans coming home, committing suicide at astronomical rates. Where's our government talking about this? Nowhere. Nobody's talking about it. That's the true tragedy. Please like, share, subscribe, get the word out. It's been a pleasure having you as always. This is the Capital News. I am Alex Karitis. Godspeed.